locally, Northern California, and they're talking about a kid named Ty Kin. If you don't know who Ty Kin is, uh, Google him. Thai Kin is Kinh. 17-year-old kid out of Stockton who was gunned down during school hours this week. I mean, he wasn't a perfect student. He wasn't an A student. He wasn't quote unquote model minority, but he was out playing basketball during school hours in broad daylight in a park next to the high school he went to in Stockton, California, where it seems, I mean, last year there was a kid in school who was killed by someone who came onto the campus at Stag High. Ty King goes to another high school in Stockton. He was playing hooky. Some guys came up to him, and it was like an attempted robbery. Who tries to rob a high school kid? What is a high school kid? I mean, unless you're looking for, to rob him of his shoes, or maybe he's got some cool jacket. I don't know. But Ty Kin, uh, one friend got pistol whipped, another friend, and that there was an attempted robbery on a friend. Ty Kin came in to try to stop it, and he gets shot, killed. The two suspects run away. Police haven't apprehended them. And now you got a 17-year-old kid dead. His buddy, I believe, still in the hospital. And they had a vigil last night. He was killed on Wednesday. They had a vigil last night in Stockton that, no one really hears about unless, they're covering it like a local story. But it's a big story in my mind. First of all, Ty Kin is a 17-year-old kid who shouldn't be dead. Shouldn't be dead of a gunshot wound. What bothers me most is that everyone's talking about mass shootings at at schools, but there are young people who are killed not in mass shootings, but in these individualized kind of one-on-one kind of things, and it's not an AR-15. I don't know what kind of weapon they use, but at close range it was probably some kind of pistol. And none of the talk about gun violence and gun control, while it's great and it's we need to have that discussion because weapons of mass murder in schools, that's a bad thing. In society, that's a bad thing. But then you get hit with this news of this 17-year-old kid, Vietnamese American, Ty Kin, who gets shot in an attempted robbery during school hours, broad daylight, public park in Stockton, California. You say, what about these guys? Who's advocating for these victims? It wasn't an AR-15. So none of the talk, the rhetoric about gun control changes the outcome for Ty Kin, except maybe like we don't know who his culprits were or who the perps were. If there were other kids, other teenagers, how'd they get their guns? We won't know until a suspect is caught. No suspect is caught. So I feel sorry for Ty Kin because what will happen is this will go down as probably one of those unsolved murders, right? Until someone steps forward, and it'll be one of those unsolved murders that no one cares about in Stockton, California. And I just for on the week that Ty Kin gets gunned down, I just want to remember him and to let people know that, yeah, some people do care. We got to care. We got to care about someone like Ty Kin. And if you're curious, you can go to a GoFundMe site. I mean, this is a situation where GoFundMe is actually appropriate. They've raised something like $11,000. But you're talking about a kid who grew up in a family down on its luck. He's not getting expert guidance. His mom is, she has I saw his mother. She appeared on the news. She's Caucasian, but she's apparently down on her luck too. I don't know where the father is. And, $11,000. I don't know what they're, this is a family that you know there's no life insurance. They don't know what to do in terms of internment and trying to bury this kid. This is something where a GoFundMe is totally appropriate and maybe the only way that people can, try to put their lives back together. I mean, I doubt there's any kind of insurance. And the 11,000 so far on a GoFundMe site, maybe there could be more. I don't know if Tykin was working, as a after school worker, couldn't have made very much. But, you're a young kid, you represent hope to your family, future income. What was his life worth? If there's no life insurance, then you can say his life wasn't worth anything. But we know that's not true. His life was worth something. Anyway, Ty Kin, Thai, Ty Kin, KINH, GoFundMe site, help the family. A victim this week that you won't hear of otherwise, unless you live in the Sacramento area. Asian American kid, not one of the model minorities, not one of those who you would say, oh, he's going places. Well, maybe, but he's young, trying to find himself. Wasn't in school. I mean, he was shot outside in a park with his buddies. And it's just one of those cases that, unless we talk about it here, you probably won't hear about. Tyke in. Anyway, welcome to Emil Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. We're going to continue talking about, yesterday we talked about Dianne Feinstein and Ro Khanna. And, Ro Khanna is the upstart congressman from the Silicon Valley. He wants to make sure Dianne Feinstein gets booted out of office, gets the hint that people want her to go. But that's not true. People don't want her to go. She deserves to go on her own terms. We'll talk about that. We'll talk more about the Justins. Both of them are now reinstated after this week. I'll also talk about Bob Lee, the murdered San Francisco tech guy who's knifed. That's the other thing. All right, here's a knifing, a stabbing. No guns. But this case, the Bob Lee case, went nationwide, not just because it was a Cash App founder, Cash App, the guy who, Bob Lee had something to do with that, but because the conservative right-wing media wants to make an issue of the lawlessness of San Francisco. Actually, it isn't just the conservative right, it's all media. CNN's doing a story about, San Francisco's lost its way. San Francisco is like lawless. Elon Musk was saying stuff about the city. Today, the murderer of Bob Lee was arraigned, and it turns out Bob Lee knew his murderer. And it wasn't a sense of lawlessness between strangers attacking decent people on the streets. It was an interpersonal dispute that ended in a stabbing. And we'll talk about that. All right, so I need to bring on my friend, College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State University. He's my go-to analyst because I just have to buy him dinner every now and then. But he's a professor emeritus, Asian American Studies, political science, Filipino American Studies. Daniel Phil Gonzalez, San Francisco State University professor emeritus, which means he has all day to talk. He's got a lot of time. That's what emeritus means. Anyway, Dan, welcome to the program. Look, I started talking about this guy Ty Kin. He's like a lot of kids of Southeast Asian backgrounds who may not have the best family situation and the best kind of guidance. And he literally just gets, he's playing essentially playing hooky. And while playing hooky, it gets into this altercation. Some guys come up to rob him and his friends. He tries to stop it. He gets shot and bleeds to death before he gets to the hospital. I just find it sad. This is a sad thing, and no one knows about Taiken, and no one's going to hear about this kind of gun violence because this kind of gun violence is all under the radar. It's like it's not mass murder. It's not an AR-15 kind of event. It's probably a little pistol. Saturday night special, and that shows a hole in our approach to trying to stop gun violence. No.
Absolutely. Um, we've had a lot of conversations about this, including personal ones off camera.
Mhm.
And I have always said that most of the past gun legislation that have been put into effect at either state, local, or
Mhm.
federal level,
Mhm.
largely ineffective. Probably the most effective one, at least according to the statistics that I've found posted by law enforcement agencies, including the FBI,
Mhm.
was the limit of 10 rounds per magazine,
Mhm.
which was part of the omnibus legislation against what were then called assault weapons, also called tactical weapons.
Yeah.
They it's one the description. I mean, I thought it was really foolish when they went against assault weapons in the 80s because and early 90s, because what they did was describe specific individual characteristics of the weapon.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, and so they called the muzzle,
Mhm.
especially the anti-flash muzzle, they call it a suppressor, and it's not. It is a suppressor of sorts,
Mhm.
but people would think that means a silencer, because
Yeah.
when you say suppress, and that's not at all what it was. They did outlaw silencers. It's illegal to make them and to have them unless you have at least a class 3 uh, federal license
Mhm.
certification for having guns and selling guns, that kind of thing, or you're a member of law enforcement, but law enforcement and military. But anyway, the point is that there's so many guns in the society that even before people could make their own very powerful weapon, okay,
Yeah.
which they can now right at home, right? And I'm not just talking about ghost guns. I'm talking about just people having the metalworking capacity to make guns. What people don't realize is one of the most popular submachine guns in the world, right, are the Uzis
Right.
made by the Israelis. And in the first couple of years of the beginnings of Israel as a nation, right, in the aftermath of World War II, they were forbidden from having weapons of war. They were forbidden from having guns.
Mhm.
So, what is an Uzi? It's made out of tractor parts.
Mhm.
They fabricated them out of the with the machinery that they were using and the metal that they were using. stamp steel as well as axles, right?
So people will make their guns. We
They
have
will
this.
make their guns, and
All right.
so
So,
that,
but I think, yeah.
let me
Go
get
ahead.
my point. I know I'm getting a little long here on this, but all of the attempts to regulate weapons on the basis of how they're made and all that,
Mhm.
the only successful one is machine guns are outlawed, and they did that, in the 20s or 30s because the gangsters were shooting Thompsons among other things, and so that's it. But other than that, it's really not very effective. They just are not talking to the right people in terms of, or listening to the right people in
Yeah.
terms of how to prevent gun violence.
See,
Secondly, it
yeah.
has
Go
nothing
ahead.
to do with culture. The kind of weapons that they're using has
Uh,
nothing to do or little to do with culture. It's only associated with culture because the AR, which is an M16 type
mhm.
weapon, right, is culturally very, very high value. Okay, and that's part of gun culture in American society. The Uzi was once very high value as well. Okay, and American guns like the Uzi. So people aren't addressing the underlying tendency towards easy violence in American society.
Easy violence. See
Easy.
that's the key word because we can go with the rhetoric right now, and right now we see so many AR-15 types. Everyone's talking about the mass violence, but as you point out, it's not really that effective. I mean, you can knife someone. You don't even need a gun. I mean, so if you
Yeah.
really want to address what's happening, which is violent murder, you have to like almost put your attention away from the weapon and talk
Yes.
about what brings on the violence. I mean, that's why I bring up Taikin. We don't know what kind of gun he got gunned down with, but
Does
it
it matter?
probably, well, it doesn't, but that's the point. See, someone going one on one wouldn't shoot, you wouldn't get shot with an AR 15 one on one, would you? At close range?
Yeah. Well,
I mean, it
I
probably would.
you could get shot with anything at any time. That's the
Yeah,
problem in American society. That you could get
yeah.
shot with anything at any time.
Right.
Um,
And but compare a high powered weapon with a Saturday night special, the 22,
yeah.
which is probably what the kid had.
I
Probably.
don't know. No.
I don't know. I'm guessing, but at close range, um, I just think it just when I heard that this 17-year-old kid was gunned down uh, off campus near a Stockton high school, it made me sad because none of the gun violence talk or none of the gun rhetoric would address what happened to him.
Absolutely. Absolutely correct. It's the easy availability of weapons and the easy resort to violence.
So,
People
yeah,
have, it's not even compulsion. It's just, I want to do violence. I'm going to use this gun. I'm going to stab somebody. And people are quite willing to do it.
right. So how do we politicize that? How do we get I mean, how do we get a different kind or how do we change the rhetoric so we talk about the real problem as opposed to talking about I mean it's almost seems easy to talk about AR-15. It's easy to talk about weapons of mass destruction because
It's easy to put the blame on them too.
yes,
And then think that because you outlaw a particular style of weapon, that it's going to really prevent
right.
the kinds of mass killings that we see.
I mean,
And
it might,
that's just not realistic.
but it might prevent mass killings, but it's not going to prevent all killings, and it's going to make uh, it might make it easy or make it harder to get those situations where you have 10 killed, 15 killed, 20 killed. But there
Okay,
will be you might have 10 or 15 individual crimes where one person is killed with one gun. And have you solved anything?
let's assume that they say, okay, here are the characteristics of assault weapons,
Mhm.
and anything fitting into this category, right, is banned from sale. From this point forward, you cannot sell this kind of weapon. Two things happen, right? Um, First of all, instantly, people who have the weapons that are now banned, right? The value of those weapons jumps in
Oh,
value.
yeah.
Okay, that's one. It creates a black market where there are many people to be, who have stockpiled in some instances military style weapons, and now they can sell them and make a whole lot of money. Okay, and that trading continues. Okay, the
Right.
other thing is there are guns, and I'm not going to name the brand or the style of weapon, but
Hmm.
there are guns that actually shoot the same projectile as the AR-15s, the popular 223
Hmm.
projectile. That's the American caliber 223, and there are many guns you can convert many popular other guns to fire the same bullet. Okay, so in terms of the destructive capacity of other weapons, they're going to have the same destructive killing capacity as
Yeah.
the military style weapon.
Yeah.
Okay, they also fire semi-automatic, so as quickly as you can pull the trigger, bullets are going to come out the barrel.
So
That's
we,
the
yeah,
reality.
yeah,
That's why
we,
I say, you know, that it's really crazy to think you don't slow it down. I think it'll slow down. I think putting bans on the number of bullets in a magazine will help. Okay,
mhm,
they'll slow down. But if you think you're going to really make a big difference on the mass killings, you're mistaken.
yeah.
And the point that you're making with Taikin is those are very common killings. Those are the kind of killings that occur, for example, in Chicago and in LA.
Right.
Okay, and
Yeah.
they're really common.
So that's the thing. I mean, you might be able to stop 17 of these at once, but you may not be able to stop 17 of these happening simultaneously everywhere else all at once. And
Yep,
what have you gained? You still have 17 people dead.
that's right.
You just haven't made it into this common thing in one place. You haven't made it a one-stop shop kind of, violence. You've made it spread out all over, but you have done absolutely nothing.
Well, the most popular caliber size, you were talking about the 22.
Right.
Hardly anybody gets the 22 as a defense weapon. Okay, even though it's effective as a defense weapon. Okay, they want to go with heavier calibers. The 9 millimeter was a military compromise away
Right.
from the 45, which for several decades, right,
Hmm.
was the standard sidearm. The Colt 45 automatic was the standard sidearm for the military, and it was also used by police. But in the 70s, there was a movement towards the 9 millimeter, and in part, the reason that movement was taken was because it was cheaper.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
also a cuter gun. It's a
Uh,
cuter
oh,
gun.
oh, jeez, it's cuter.
Cute. It's
No,
more manly. More
they can
manly.
have the same. They can have the same mass, almost the same frame and slide mass in the
Yeah.
instance of automatics
Yeah.
as a full size 45. But there's a cute 45. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a
What?
commando size 45 that still fires the same bullet, and some
Yeah.
of them even take extended clips, and some are even double ramped feed, so they can have 12, 13, 14
So
shots in the magazine.
so you end up so if we ban certain guns like the AR-15, it's almost like uh the if you want firepower, you'll get it elsewhere. If you want, quickness,
Easily,
you'll get it anywhere. So
easily.
it's almost like we have created a I mean, look, I love the Justins and I love what they're doing and we've talked about how Justin Pearson, Justin Jones, they've now been reinstated in Tennessee. They want to, talk about gun control and ban the assault weapons. But, and it's important. I don't mean to, detract and say, hey, it's not important work, but it's only part of the gun violence issue.
Yep, that's right. The greater issue is really the issue of violence and
And,
the
yeah,
the easy tendency of people to resort to violent behavior. to engage in violent behavior. Look at the freeway shootings,
Yeah. Well,
right, in
so
the Bay Area.
yeah, I know. So Dan, how would you go about that if you don't go and
It takes cultural change, and it takes people willing to, we ought to pay. If we paid money to people, if they see something, say something, I would take it further than that. See something, say something, do something. Okay, that's what we have to do about violence in American society. We have to put it in its proper place. We have to criticize people resorting to violence so easily. Look at what happens on airplanes,
oh
right?
yeah, yeah,
You
right
know,
now, yeah,
the AR-15 issue is kind of a symptom. It's not the cause of the problem; it's the symptom,
yeah, yeah,
right? And so we got to address it culturally. I mean, it has to be constant. People have to be talking about nonviolent means to resolve disputes. People have to talk about community activism. I mean, look what happened. I was watching during the COVID era, there were all of these confrontations at city councils, right,
mm-hmm,
on whether or not to have mask mandates.
mm-hmm,
And in a township or city in Marin County, right,
mm-hmm,
San Rafael has a little bit of a crime problem. Marin City, the project housing has a little bit of a crime problem, and they're well known for that. But this was in a
mm-hmm.
overwhelmingly white suburban upper middle class environment, not an upper class environment, and a woman who was against wearing masks went up to a man who was speaking at the time and who had just finished speaking. He turned away from the microphone and she attacked him. She put her hand on his face and pulled the mask off his face.
Wow.
Okay, that, my friend, is an assault and battery. That
Oh
woman
yeah,
should have been immediately arrested, right, and
yeah,
then charged with assault and battery. I don't know if she was, but the arrogance of people like that and their willingness to act once again with violence,
mm-hmm,
okay, because they're against mask mandates. What's that?
yeah,
What kind of behavior is that? And it was a white woman acting against a white man. All right.
yeah,
So look at that. That's the culture, man.
yeah, yeah. Well, I want to circle back to Ty Kin, THAI, capital KINH, 17-year-old kid,
Now,
Stockton, gun.
my question is also, were the perpetrators of a different race?
Don't know. I mean, it's unclear. They came on to they're playing basketball. The kids who, according to the news stories, Ken was playing basketball at Unity Park. Another teen, two suspects robbed that other teen. The robbery turned into a fight. Ken was shot while trying to intervene. The second victim was also a student, was pistol whipped and transported to the hospital. They don't know about, they said the suspected attackers fled on foot, still at large. I hope they catch him, but until they do, it's one of those cases that will go down as, it'll go from hot to warm to cold to unsolved. And that's why I wanted to mention Ty Kin. He's got a GoFundMe site. His friends have put it up, and they've raised something like $11,000. I hope they raise more because I'm sure they were not prepared to deal with this at all. So anyway, Dan, it turns out you're not only a professor of Asian American Studies, political science, Filipino American Studies, but also of gun culture.
Yeah, yeah.
So, which is good.
I don't know what to say. I do deal, with the Second Amendment in my
Yeah,
classes
yeah,
because it's one of the amendments, right? And I did
right.
a class that featured a review of the Constitution and other documents, but we spent a significant amount of time on the Second Amendment. Um, the the bad news is that even at the end of a semester where mass killings occur and there's media attention given to them on a national and even international basis,
Hmm.
I got students who are against regulation of
Ooh.
guns,
Now, why do you
even at the
think?
end of the semester.
Wow, because they just believe in freedom so damn much, or what?
Yes,
It's the
yes,
freedom. Don't take
yes,
away our freedom.
and
Wow.
they buy into the self defense argument, right? That's the big argument that
Yeah.
people put forward is the Second Amendment clearly makes it available so that and then there's the second the second thing that I guess that they're supporting is the notion that the government could come and get you, and if you got a gun you'll be able to resist that effectively.
Wow. So there, you're just training young conservatives in the Second Amendment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
As well,
mean,
that's what they believe. That's what the NRA sells, right?
yeah.
That's what the right wing sells. That's what a lot of the so-called Christian nationalists
Hmm.
and the neo Nazis.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the thing that cracks me up. You got neo Nazis out there, and what are they saying? When the fascists took over, in World War II, the first thing they did was take away the guns.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look. I mean, you take away the
What are they
guns.
going to do if they get into power? They're going to leave us. They're going to leave us. Law-abiding gun owners, right? They're going to leave us all alone, right?
Well, you take away the guns, they'll find the knives, and that's our transition to the Bob Lee story. We'll keep our violence all in one section. I mean,
Okay.
the Bob Lee should have been a local story, sort of
Yeah.
like Ty Kin, but Bob Lee was not a local story. It was
No,
like national.
because it
Because,
happened in San Francisco.
yeah, yeah,
Didn't happen in
because
Stockton.
in San Francisco, but it happened in San Francisco. In San Francisco, it would appear uh, that the Bob Lee case was used by those elsewhere as an example that, oh, look at how lawless and screwed up and messed up San Francisco is. And so now we have the man accused of Bob Lee's murder, Nima Momeni, who happens to be a tech entrepreneur in Emeryville, 38 years old. They've arrested and arraigned Momeni. He's in jail without bail. Um, they say that there was a dispute that they were hanging out with each other early on, and that at 2:45 in the morning on April 4th, on that trendy Rincon Hill area, Lee was bleeding from stab wounds in his chest and hip. And then, while scouring the area, the police found a kitchen knife discarded in the parking lot. They always find them. If you think you just sort of discard it by just throwing it at random, they'll find it. And it was a black 4-inch blade stained with blood. So the the arraignment happened today. They're charging Momeni with murder, and according to reports, they say that Lee had been drinking with friends, including Momeni's sister, and that there was a dispute about Momeni and about it was about the sister, and apparently had to do about whether or not the sister was doing drugs that night and if there was anything inappropriate. But there was some disagreement, and it led to this alleged knife attack. So my question, Dan, a lot of people tried to use this case as a symbol or a sign that look how lawless San Francisco is.
Yeah. Yep.
Uh, that's not exactly what it was. The crime isn't that. It was a kind of a personal
No,
dispute.
it wasn't a random crime being
Yeah.
committed by a person, between people who didn't know each other.
Yeah.
It was a. Did you describe the weapon as a kitchen knife?
It was described, it was reported as a kitchen knife, a 4-inch blade.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
yeah, there's a lot of 4-inch blade. That's like the size of a paring knife, right?
yeah,
That
yeah.
you use to debone chicken and stuff like
Or
that.
maybe even a steak knife could be 4 inches,
That's
right?
true too, but usually they're longer than that. A regular
Yeah.
steak knife, they're usually longer than that, and they have a serrated blade. They're not
Not a
so.
vegetarian steak knife.
How can you tell? Come on now, man.
All right.
Anyway, a knife is a knife, but
It is
I
nice.
find it interesting that if they're correct, it was a kitchen implement.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a stylized folding knife
No.
uh,
No, it
or
wasn't
any of
like
that,
a
and
no.
so it wasn't the act doesn't seem to be committed by a person who was once again even in self-defense mode into weapons that are
Al-
potentially deadly weapons.
Although the suspect does have an instance
A
with a
history.
history of a like a full of a switchblade knife
Oh,
in his past. Yeah.
okay.
So I don't know. He
Okay, well,
probably didn't
that
have one
that
on
is
him.
definitely a sign,
Yeah.
right? That is definitely a sign.
So
I carry a knife,
yeah,
all the time, but
it's illegal to carry a knife, isn't it?
it's a folding knife, and yes, it is a legal blade even
Yeah.
under San Francisco standards, which is pretty. It's a short blade.
Yeah. It's legal, right? You said legal.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's illegal because I know knife laws vary from place to place,
Yep,
but
they do.
when you start seeing a situation like this and it's a knife, now you gotta, it's not a gun. Now we're back to individual things, and now the knife and maybe a 22, they're kind of like, it gets us back into where we really should be talking about these individual instances that lead to violence, even if it's one on one. How do you stop that? Because if you can stop that, maybe you can stop the mass killings.
Yeah. Once again, even though remember 3 strikes you're out. I
Yeah.
mean, 3 strikes you're in freaking prison for life.
Hmm.
And they had idiotic requirements like it has to be a felony,
Hmm.
but you could steal a bicycle and that could end up being a felony because people had a lot of trick bikes out there, right? That $1,500, $2,000 bikes,
Hmm.
and so people were being given life imprisonment sentences after stealing their third bike,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Stealing leather jackets, right, from stores. Anyway, the point I'm making is the initial intention was to deal with the increasing level not only of crime but of violent crime.
Yeah.
Okay, but many of the people who were being imprisoned, convicted and imprisoned, right, did not commit violent crimes.
Hmm.
Okay, so that's why 3 strikes fell out of favor. Okay, it also was passed as an initiative in California when crime had actually been going down at the time.
Hmm.
But there was an effective, once again, conservative, and I'm putting that in quotes, is really a right wing effort, right, to gain popular support, and they used initiatives like that, like Proposition 13, for example, very effective campaign to get popular support. Okay,
Yeah. Well, and all based on a kind of persuasion that isn't necessarily based on the facts.
well, when did the attitude towards San Francisco suddenly increase? The negative attitude towards San Francisco suddenly increased, and it was because of the not mass murders. There have been mass murders here, but there weren't any recent mass
Hmm.
murders.
Hmm.
Not gang killings, okay, but the smash and grabs
Oh yeah.
by large groups of people.
Smash and grabs, and also the fact that the law, right, permits uh,
The lack
prosecution,
of enforcement. The lack of
right,
enforcement.
right, and because the law has a threshold where there's no, it's not a felony up till, I don't know what the number is, say $5,000, so that people will steal up to 5,000, or they'll steal 4,000, and then they'll get a misdemeanor and they'll leave, or they'll get off, versus grand. I think it's grand theft. I know what the law is, but there's a threshold that it becomes so much paperwork that law enforcement doesn't even want to get into it.
Yeah, that's right. It wasn't, two things coincided, right?
Mm-hmm.
One was the criticism of enforcement methods,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And one of the reasons that came up was because of the killing, for example, of Mr. Floyd.
Right.
So other killings like that, right, all over the
Yeah.
country, but especially in red states, okay,
Mm-hmm.
by police, came under greater scrutiny. And
Mm-hmm.
so there were a whole lot of killings here by police in Northern California that came under scrutiny.
Yeah.
Okay, uh, the killing of a Filipino gentleman in the Vallejo Pittsburgh area, right,
Yeah.
also came under police scrutiny, and justifiably so. So that was going on. An anti-police movement started, and the right seized on defund the police language that was used by some people on the so-called progressive left, and that was used very effectively, right, to criticize progressive perspectives on law enforcement and on the justice system in general, right? So
Mm-hmm.
everything came under greater scrutiny, right, from the
Yeah.
moment of the contact with the police all the way through prosecution, conviction, and imprisonment.
Yeah. But it was really just the symbol that San Francisco, this symbol of progressive liberal thought,
Exactly,
screwed up. And if
exactly.
they screw it up, oh man, then you can't believe
Along with the
anything.
progressive liberal attitude, they're soft on crime, and
Right.
the right has been arguing soft on crime ever since I was born.
Right. And
The same
also,
thing they say, strong military, right,
mhm,
and we're
mhm,
for law and order.
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and let's not forget Nancy Pelosiville.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
and
The
Dianeville.
and Dianeville. Yeah, Diane
you know,
Feinsteinville.
you
And
know.
we'll talk about that. But all right, so the Bob Lee thing, uh, now people are saying in San Francisco, people are saying they're trying to say, look, we're not that bad. This is not. I mean,
That's
they're
the
trying to.
official reaction. Yeah, the
Yeah,
official reaction.
they're trying to point out that, oh, you know,
The
East
media
Coast.
is exaggerating
Yeah,
the problem. It's not based on fact. It's not based on data.
yeah. It's
Okay, and we
it's
have clearly the data, and what they're citing is correct.
yeah.
But
It's not a. It's not a random crime. It's not the lawlessness of San Francisco. That's
that's right. That's right. But when you ask people
yeah,
on the street, right, do they feel safe? The popular response at this point seems no.
yeah,
Because people are shocked that certain kinds of deadly crime occur in neighborhoods where there's virtually the only kind of crime is usually theft, right?
yeah.
Car break-ins,
Yeah,
things like that.
yeah. I have to say that since coming back from New York, um, after spending like more than a month, I actually have felt more scared in San Francisco than I did at any point in New York. And New York is no, New York has some crime issues too,
Sure.
and especially where I was, it seemed, it was more semi gentrified area, but lots of foot traffic all hours of the day. But I did not feel endangered at all. But there are times when I walk through the Tenderloin or walk through like that Market Street corridor around 8th and Market where the Whole
Yep.
Foods
Yep.
shut down.
Yep.
And I am not altogether, you know, sure if I'm all that safe there in San Francisco. I'm a native. I usually have a native's, flair that oh, this is my town. I don't feel that about San
Because of
Francisco.
the problem with homelessness
Yeah.
and the fact that the San Francisco city and county has not been effective in dealing with homelessness.
Mhm.
Uh,
For
yeah,
years, for years,
yeah, decades, man. I
decades. Yeah.
mean, the homeless situation became very visible when the state of California, when the government shut down the hospitals, the state
Yeah.
hospitals that were many of which were set up to accommodate people with psychiatric problems.
Yep, and they let them all out on the street.
Yeah, and they were supposed to be cared for at halfway residence, houses, and then transitioned into real life, which
Yeah.
I thought was ridiculous. It was a really stupid policy, man.
Well, but
And,
we're living with it. It's still there, and it's
uh,
the mental hospitals. You know, I don't know what the
it's
answer is.
worse. I mean,
Yeah,
we're not just living with it; we're living with a worsened circumstance for
yeah,
the homeless as well as the housed population.
yeah,
Okay, so I you are absolutely you should feel absolutely fine with your anxiety about being in the Tenderloin.
yeah,
Because the likelihood of crime there is pretty high. Okay. Um, Unfortunately, it's associated with what's called open drug dealing. Right?
yeah.
It's
Well,
right
that's
on the
an
street. It's really obvious. A lot of it occurs in front of social and medical service
yeah.
agencies.
Hmm.
So it's not really healthy. You know.
So
Uh,
how do we deal with this? I mean, well, we're not going to solve it here, but I just think that it's interesting that uh, San Francisco is now trying to fight back and say, hey, look, our image isn't that bad, you know, but
our,
I
yeah,
don't
the
think I
data is
don't
not right. Yeah,
yeah, but I
and
don't think that's going to solve. I think the people in the New York Times, um, people around the country when they read it, they'll roll their eyes and just like Pelosi, the look. I'm a big fan of Pelosi, but she has to deal with a lot of stuff. The same kind of thing. It's the anti-San Francisco bias that exists.
yeah, yeah, that's very strong. I talk about that in my class as well. I say that you would. I ask people how many of you have traveled around the country, how many have traveled outside the country, and when they raise their hands, I ask them, "What do you think about the reputation of San Francisco and California?" And we have a little bit of discussion on that, and I usually I have to prompt them and say, well, uh, would you say that people's attitude towards San Francisco is positive or negative in other parts of the country? And none of them say that it's negative. And then I have to mention certain questions that get asked. Um, when uh, when uh, when Milk was celebrated as a first out politician, right?
Harvey Milk.
Yep. Well, I was somewhere outside the state of California. I can't remember exactly where. I think it was in the Midwest, probably Ohio.
Mhm.
And I got asked by people at a restaurant where I was sitting. They said, you're here for the conference. It was a conference held at Oberlin.
Mhm.
And I said, yeah. And so, we got into a casual conversation, and they were locals. And they said, how is it to live in San Francisco with like, how does it feel with all those gay people?
Right.
And my response to them was, well, how do you feel right now?
Yeah.
And then they froze up because they thought they had just insulted a gay guy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But that's how I responded to them.
Well, it's true that sometimes the reporting of something is more dangerous and more effective or more it causes more anxiety than the actual truth. The actual truth of the situation is heightened by any kind of reporting, and so
That's right.
you could say, "Oh, well, we don't have more crime, but we have more crime reporting. We don't have we we don't have more gay people. We have more gay reporting. We
Yeah.
we have and the perception of sometimes it feeds people's perception and their ignorance if they don't know what's really going on with crime. They think,
Well, I
oh,
think
there's
you've
so
made you've made a really important point. Is that there are a lot of people all over this country that really hate San Francisco just because of it's identified with liberal and progressive political and social ideas.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, why was there? Why did a gay lesbian community develop in San Francisco in the first place? Right? What's the history of that development? And what you'll find, right? I mean, people weren't really concerned about a queer community that concerned in the early '50s, but by the late '50s, they were getting more and more concerned because North Beach was known and it was popularized, especially in the men's magazines, as
Yeah.
being a queer paradise, right?
Yeah.
And so the entertainment industry. You remember Finocchio's,
Oh yeah. Yeah. The
drag shows and all that.
drag shows.
So
Yeah.
so all of that stuff started getting played up, and a lot of gay and lesbian people from the East Coast were exiled
To
by
San
their
Francisco.
middle upper class and upper class families,
Yeah.
and they came. Guess where?
Of
To
course. Of
San
course.
Francisco.
Yeah.
And when North Beach became overpopulated, it was started getting really crowded and expensive, right, to live
Mm-hmm.
there.
Mm-hmm.
People moved into the Castro, and that caused a direct confrontation with renters. And
Yeah.
the Castro district used to be a rental district, and a lot of families lived there. And so now
I
they're getting displaced, by gays and lesbians, mostly gays at first,
yeah.
and now that the Castro is known, worldwide as the Castro, right?
Yeah.
It's,
Hey, I grew up three blocks from the Castro.
right. Yeah.
On
Depending
Church
on which
Street.
direction, right? If you
Yeah.
were to the south of Castro,
Yeah.
then you were in the Mission. But if
Yeah.
you were in the north of Castro, you were in the Castro.
Yeah. No, I was south. I 3 blocks south. Church Street.
Right, right,
Yeah.
church.
Church. So anyway, all right. So look, the Bob Lee story still is gripping America, a local
Absolutely.
story. It's still about violence and still about being anti San Francisco.
Yeah, but there's a
But
lot of San Franciscans that are being interviewed, and they're
yeah,
and they're underscoring the image that's being played in the media. Okay,
yeah,
so they're contributing to the problem. So you got locals
yeah,
contributing to the problem by saying, no, I don't feel safe on San Francisco streets.
yeah. At least it was white people. Well, or an Iranian. The suspect is Iranian. Um, it's not stereotypical in the way that people usually stereotype gun violence. But then if you look at the random, gun violence that we've had, the perps have always been white.
Oh, you mean the mass violence?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
mass
almost
violence.
always. Yeah,
Yeah,
on occasion, they're black or Latino. Sometimes, very rare,
yeah.
they're Asian.
Buffalo white, um,
Yeah.
Illinois white,
Well, don't
uh,
forget Pacifica.
Pacifica.
The
Which one?
Asian.
Oh yeah, oh the Asian one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah. There was. Yeah, we had the Asian shooter,
Half Moon Bay.
Half Moon Bay. Yeah, we can't. All right, so the stereotype. Well, all right, let's get away from stereotypes. But all right, so Bob Lee, we'll see what happens to the suspect there. It's sad. It's always some kind of personal thing, um, but it's not like the perp doesn't have a defense. I mean, according to his lawyers, they say that Uh, Momemi's attorney, according to the Chronicle, Paula Canny, said she believes her client is innocent and that prosecutors did not build a convincing case for premeditated murder. So it means that maybe spur of the moment, maybe you could say,
Yeah, second degree or even manslaughter. One.
or yeah, she says, I think it's interesting that they didn't identify their source. She said, referring to the friend who met Lee and Momeni's sister at the Mission Street apartment. Prosecutors described the friend as witness one in the filing. So, like, we don't know what Momeni's going to say. You could say, look, it was self defense. He came after me. Although I guess the video shows he went after Bob Lee first, or the man wearing clothing that fits what Momeni was wearing lunged first. But like I said, we're going to have to see how the details come out. In the meantime, Momeni sits in jail, no bail. Uh, 187 is the California Penal Code. That's the murder penal code in California. And, they you can be justified. We mentioned self defense earlier. If there was some kind of self defense thing, possibly you'd have some kind of defense.
No. Once a person has a weapon,
Mm.
they're clearly the aggressor. They're clearly the aggressor. You know, uh, unless a weapon is found on Mr. Lee or somewhere in the area where the altercation, the physical violence
If they
occurred.
if they both had weapons, in other words.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
All right.
some kind. He had to have some kind of weapon. I mean, once somebody shows up with a weapon, they're assumed under the law to be an aggressor.
So let's just see if what the details are once the attorneys get in there and try to create a narrative. But right now we have Bob Lee, Bob Lee dead, Nima Mameni,
You know,
and
Momeni would have to show that Bob Lee attacked him.
yeah,
You know, if he can show that Bob Lee was the aggressor, the initial aggressor, he might have a defense. Okay, but I find it interesting that they describe the knife as a kitchen knife because that means he would have had to thought about, packing that knife.
yeah, because it wasn't. Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see. The blood was on the knife,
You know, he
so
happened to be boning a chicken, deboning a chicken, like maybe an hour earlier, and he just happened to have the knife. And
came to mind that yeah he should be doing this.
yeah, and then he was walking on the street, and at
Yeah.
that time of the freaking morning after the bars close, right?
So let's see what happens. Okay. All right. Now, just a couple more topics. I want to talk about DiFi, Diane Feinstein, and then we'll talk about Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas has gotten a lot of play. Um,
Needlessly so.
yeah.
There's the media again
Well,
going after the poor man.
no, but but the DiFi story has, but not with our spin or not with my spin. I mean, all right. So here's the thing: Dianne Feinstein has said she is willing to step down. She wants to fill her term, and I've talked about this because that means that she screws up the secession that was set up by Gavin Newsom, who said he was going to appoint a black woman, who it looks like it was going to be Barbara Lee. Well, when Feinstein says she's not going to go until her term runs its course, it allowed other people to step in to say, all right, we'll run too, and that would meant Adam Schiff, and he's raised a lot of money. Also Katie Porter, and she's raised a lot of money. And Barbara Lee, who could have been the incumbent running and could have been, because this is the Newsom style, to appoint people of color who haven't, gotten a shot in these high positions. He was going to appoint Barbara Lee, and they usually, with the incumbency, end up serving out the incumbency and then winning on their own, as in the case of Alex Padilla, as in the case of Rob Bonta. So Barbara Lee, I like her. I root for her. I just don't like what her campaign manager or one of her campaign leaders, Khanna, congressman out of Silicon Valley, is doing, leading the charge to try to kick out DiFi, to force DiFi out now so that Gavin Newsom can appoint Barbara Lee. You see, I
Yeah,
mean, they're trying to
yeah.
force the
It
situation.
becomes it becomes very transparent, and as
Yeah,
a result, I think reasonable people might be repulsed.
yeah. I mean, they're trying to make it. They're look. If Dianne Feinstein says I'm not leaving until my term's over, Then we have an open race. Everyone gets in, and then we'll see what happens. Barbara Lee, I don't think has as good a shot there because she doesn't have the money raising firepower as Adam Schiff or Katie Porter, although she may be better qualified in some ways.
I think she is. I think from an experience point of view, and
Hmm.
from her positions in the past on not only domestic issues but international issues,
Yeah.
she has taken very wise and thoroughly circumspect positions on issues where she was against, clearly in the minority. I mean,
Yeah. You're
I
talking
think
about
she was the only person who voted against
the war.
Desert Storm,
Yeah.
against Desert Storm.
She,
Going into leaving, moving through Kuwait,
yeah. She was the
into
only. She
Saddam
stood.
land.
She stood alone
She did. She was solo on
against
that,
that,
and she was right. She was correct.
and that takes a tremendous amount of courage, a tremendous amount of guts. I love Barbara Lee. I think she should be the person that Gavin Newsom appoints. However, I also am respectful of Dianne Feinstein, and if Dianne Feinstein says she can hang in there to her term, I think she should. However, I think also she's doing it because she has her political motivation, which is she probably wants her replacement to be Adam Schiff.
Right, right.
So, you know,
And Schiff is clearly. I mean, if we were to place those three candidate or potential candidate, well, I guess they're already declared to the. If we're to place them on the spectrum,
mhm,
right, a linear spectrum,
mhm.
right, from
A
left
to Z.
to center,
Yeah.
okay,
Mhm.
Schiff is closest to the center,
Right.
and on some issues, to be fair, he might even be a little bit to the conservative side, okay. On
Yeah.
the other hand, Katie Porter is clearly a progressive,
Right.
okay, and then you got Barbara Lee, who's even further left than Katie Porter, and
Mhm.
I think that's the reason that Barbara Lee is going to have more difficult time, right, running
Mhm.
in an open race.
She would have, and I think it does. I mean, it was almost like Gavin Gavin Newsom was willing to put her on the fast lane by making
Sure,
her an
but then
incumbent.
when he did that, when he said, "I'll appoint a black woman," it didn't matter that the probably the most qualified person from Congress would be Barbara Lee.
Yeah.
It mattered that he was saying he was going to appoint another minority person.
Mhm.
Okay, and he'd already done that two times, well, once before, and
Padilla. Yeah.
you know,
For
so
boxer or for
yeah, yeah.
boxer seat.
So then everybody who's not necessarily against the person of color occupying that position, but people who are looking at the political spectrum and seeing where people stand on issues, that's going to play a role in that. And obviously, Schiff would be a better choice, but by people that are
Yeah.
truly center left.
Well, this is really an only in California thing, right? Because, but it shows the kind of infighting, the micro
Yeah,
infighting
yeah, that's
of
right.
of the Democrats,
That's right.
and how it's it doesn't make sense. I mean, people elsewhere will say, "God, Democrats shooting themselves in the foot again," but these are different kinds of Democrats, and
Yeah,
my beef really is with Ro Khanna because Ro Khanna is just ultimate opportunist. I mean, he's always done this in terms of generational. It's almost like he is a professional congressional ageist. He pushed out Mike Honda, Asian American congressman who was. This is the seat that Norm Mineta held, and Honda wasn't ready to go. Honda pushed at him twice, tried to run, and then I think
yeah,
the
yeah. He
third time,
failed the first time. Yeah.
yeah, or first, yeah. I mean, it just he just went after him time and time again, and then, and I'm not saying that Mike Honda was necessarily the greatest legislator, but I think I think once you've served for a period of time, either house, the House of Representatives or the Senate, if you've served well, I think you're owed the right to step down when you want. Your constituents will tell you when you should leave. But here we have Khanna telling Feinstein to leave, and I think Khanna should just shut up.
I think it was a big mistake. I think what he did reflects badly on Barbara Lee,
Yeah,
and that's a problem. Uh, you could criticize, DiFi for a whole lot of stuff. I
yeah,
mean, I've called her a dino, Democrat in name only, because
mm,
she's taken relatively conservative positions on a number of issues.
right.
When she was initially voted into office, she was more popular in Southern California than she was in Northern California.
Mm.
She got heavy voting support from Southern California, and she was never a real progressive even in San Francisco politics.
She was moderate. She was moderate,
Yeah,
and
she was definitely a centrist.
look, I mean, she was married to a big time capitalist. She, she's not exactly Diane of the people, but I will say this: I've known her, throughout my life. I mean, I first met her when I was 16, when she was a supervisor,
Hmm.
and I, I, I cover her at some Democratic conventions, and she's always very friendly. Um, Here's the thing: if she were to meet me today, I doubt she'd remember me, and
Me too. Me too.
and that's one of the things about what people are saying about whether she has the faculty or whether she has the functional ability to serve right now. She's just not quite as sharp as she was even 5 years ago, 10
Yeah,
years.
and I felt that she should have retired back then.
Yeah,
I would like her to retire now, but the reality is, uh, you know, well, the hard reality right now is that she has missed as of
right.
as of Tuesday, it was 60 votes.
She's missed a ton of
Okay,
votes to appoint these judges
and
on
by
the
today,
judiciary
it's got to
thing.
be 80 votes that she's missed.
All
You
right,
know,
so but as Nancy Pelosi would say, people don't go after male senators, and so it boils down to this: uh, how do you want your sexism with a little ageism, mixed in, or do you just want it pure
just give
sexism?
me 50-50, fifty
Yeah,
fifty, man.
50
That's
50,
good.
half and half. I mean, how do you like your racism? With a little ageism, with a little sexism,
One of
you
my
know.
colleagues said, "Well, which kind of racism do you want? Do you want to be patted on the head or kicked in the ass?" Right?
Well, that's a good one. I
It
I
is.
like
I
I
mean, I
like
love it. That's by George Wu, by the way, former
oh,
chair of Asian American Studies, and
I like the
oh,
less violent way, of course,
yeah.
unless you're wearing Skechers. So no, I mean it's real though. I mean, I thought at some point we get out of the race thing, and we'd all be old together, but now we see people like Rokana the ageist, right? I mean, that's what he is. He's a damn ageist.
uh, the way he came off, yes, I would say so. But you got to be if you're going to be critical of her and her, you got to talk about uh, specific elements of specific decisions or positions that she's
Mm.
taken, and
And
then criticize that. Okay, but yeah, just saying she's feeble, that doesn't cut it,
yeah,
right?
well, the thing is, she has addressed that, addressed the idea of the missing vote, saying, "Look, you can replace me. You can replace me
Yes,
temporarily.
yes.
I'll go out on my own." And I think she still wants to control her successor, and by controlling the successor, she's saying, "Hey, Adam Schiff is my guy."
Yeah,
and
sure.
and I'm a Barbara Lee fan, so I should just say, okay, whatever, by whatever means.
Well, if I'm going to be fully ageist, I'm going to
Mm.
say Schiff is too old.
Well, yeah, how old is
We need
Schiff?
younger people. I don't know. You want me to
He
look it
looks
up?
he looks old. I
He looks
mean,
old enough
I
to
think
not
he's
be
like in his
desirable.
he's got to be in his 50s,
Are
right? Adam
you
Schiff.
looking him up? I'm looking it up.
I'm looking. Let's see. He's 62. 60. You can't kick out a 62
Yeah,
year
well,
old guy.
that's
He's
13 years younger than me.
yeah. When he's younger than me. He's a youngster, Adam Schiff.
Yeah, yeah.
So okay, he's
See,
still.
I'm out to pasture. You know.
But so what if? But what about this idea that people should allow? If you're a public servant who served so long, you should be allowed to gracefully exit on your own terms.
Yeah, Schiff is he's still a member of loosely of our baby boom generation, and
Right.
we got to make room for younger people. I would like to see younger people. This society right now, because of the Supreme Court, right, and it's I mean, I've never seen it this low. The polling against the Supreme Court, aren't they somewhere around 12% or something? It's really low.
Yeah. I saw that it was historic lows, but I haven't seen the specific
Yeah.
polling. But it is sad, and look, we should use this a moment to transition to the last topic of the day, which is Clarence Thomas. And regular listeners know that I've been talking about the ProPublica reporting. Everyone talks about the ProPublica reporting, and at some point they even mention ProPublica did the reporting. I mentioned it right out front. I talked about the first story about the luxury trips that billionaire Harlan Crow gave to Clarence Thomas and his wife. But the second story broke yesterday. The second story, uh, headline: Billionaire Harlan Crow bought property from Clarence Thomas. The Justice Department, or the Justice, didn't disclose the deal. And this is a significant story because this shows that there was a monetary relationship. And it shows that this is the first time, the first known instance of money flowing from Crow to the Supreme Court justice. And this Crow is a mega donor for the GOP. He bought two vacant lots and the house where Thomas's mother was living. If that doesn't bind you to a GOP mega donor, I don't know what does. And so it was the Crow Company bought the properties for $133,363 back in 2014, and nothing was said. There was no disclosure, and there's a law that says after Watergate that requires justices and other officials to disclose the details of real estate deals over $1,000. But Thomas didn't abide by that law. So it appears that there's a violation of law. And if there's a violation of law, should there be, I don't know, for receiving that trip money in that first ProPublica story, it wasn't as clear cut. This is a clear cut federal disclosure law. What do you think, Dan? Are we talking about?
Yeah, he broke the law. I mean, he obviously broke the law. I mean, once we started looking at his failure to report
Hmm,
uh, vacations that were said to be valued,
hmm,
including the jet travel and all that,
yeah,
at $500,000, at $500,000 or more, right?
right, right.
You know that there's going to be a whole lot more shoes dropping.
Hmm,
Okay, and that occurred over a period of 20 years.
Right.
and some of the vacations that he took were annual, or every 2 years.
Mhm.
So this is a ridiculous amount of money, and his rationale was, I was told by people around here,
Yeah.
around the court, that I
Yeah.
didn't have to report it, and he said, it's gifts between close friends.
Right.
Okay, but it's one-way gifts between close friends. It's not a bilateral exchange of gifts of similar value, man. It's one-sided, and it's going in one direction, and it's big bucks, right?
Yeah.
So this exchange, this property sale, clearly is covered by the law, and he broke the law. Okay, now why is his mother still there? He probably sold it while preserving a life estate in
Mhm.
favor of his mother. Okay, and that could be done. It could be written right into the deed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse,
Oh
Democrat,
yeah.
Rhode Island. He's good at these things. He says he's a senior member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. This would be something that Dianne Feinstein would be part of, maybe if she gets stepped in, if she takes a pass.
Yeah, because she's on the committee. Yeah.
Yeah, she's on that committee. White House called on the body overseeing the federal judiciary to refer Justice Clarence Thomas to the Department of Justice for investigation.
Yes.
And according to this is White House in a statement, it would be best for the Chief Justice to commence a proper investigation, but after a week of silence in the court and this latest disturbing reporting, I'm urging the Judicial Conference to step in and refer Justice Thomas to the Attorney General for investigation. So they want to go straight to an investigation by the Attorney General. This is all because of ProPublica, a nonprofit journalism group, digging into this, and this is the second of the first one, which last week talked about luxury vacations and private jet use. Now we have this this uh, this real estate in Savannah that Trammell Crow, which is in Dallas, right? Harlan Crow, part of the Trammell Crow group. I think that was his father. Uh, Harlan Crow. What business does he have of buying a house in Savannah unless he knows? Oh, this is Clarence Thomas's house. In fact, he said, "Oh, I'm going to make it a Clarence Thomas library. I'm trying to preserve this," which is that seems like another conflict on top of a conflict, right? Because if he knew that, well, he knew he was buying it from Clarence Thomas, but if that usually for these kind of things, don't they have to like go out to bid, or don't they have to? I mean, isn't it a matter of like some kind of public bidding to do something for this house, and as opposed to inviting someone to buy your house or buy these properties? This would be subject to the investigation.
Yeah, I don't know about public bid. I mean, if he's entitled to do a private sale anytime he wants. The thing that I'm looking at is, so what? Okay, so he violated the law.
Hmm.
Uh, can he be? Uh,
Kicked out.
well,
I mean,
initially, can he be not only investigated, but can he be charged? And if charged, can he be forced to stand trial? Okay.
well, the
So
report.
then
Yeah.
the issue of impeachment, right,
Mhm.
becomes clear. However, impeachment, it has to originate in the lower house. It has to originate in the House of Representatives. And
Ah.
as long as the Republicans got a majority, that ain't going to happen. So if you're going to look at removal, even if he was convicted,
Mhm.
okay, of a violation, right? And I think they would probably just nail him for civil penalties or something, you know.
Well, according to this report, I'm reading financial disclosure law. that Thomas is alleged to have violated states that justices must knowingly and willfully fail to report gifts that should have been disclosed. Such a violation may result in fines of up to 50,000, or if the violator falsifies the report, not more than 1 year in prison. So it seems like a kind of maybe a low level felony.
Very low level, because the standard for felony is 1 year.
Mhm.
It has to, if somebody is guilty of a crime and the punishment is 1 year or more in prison, that qualifies as a felony.
So all right, so all it is 1 year, and as you point out, it may not be enough to remove Thomas.
Right. And they could just do the fines rather than time in jail, or they could do both
Uh,
and then give them credit for time served, or suspend, right,
uh,
imprisonment. And
yeah.
then the question is, can he be removed in any other way? And the answer is no, unless he voluntarily steps down. The only way you can get rid of the dude is by impeachment. And I just said, as long as Republicans got the House, that ain't going to happen.
See,
Got to
and
have both houses of Congress.
this is the thing. We used to rely on people's shame, people's sense of
How about
uh,
just simply integrity, right?
well,
There's an
integrity.
expectation that people engage in the law, right? Whether whatever position you take an oath to the Constitution. You
Yeah.
take an oath to execute the law if you in that kind of position. You and judges come under even heavier scrutiny, except for the Supreme Court.
Which it ends up policing itself, and then
No ethical guidelines, you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. This is the problem with this story. You can't. It's so difficult to get rid of Clarence Thomas unless he is shamed into really feeling the integrity of his position, which he clearly, he's just hanging in there. He's not, he doesn't care about integrity. He just cares about staying in and right. I mean, I just don't see him as he's not budging. I'm here. You know, I didn't
He
have to disclose. Oh,
he
did I
has the
have?
same kind of characteristics that a lot of people on the leadership of the Republican Party have had for decades, and that
Yeah,
is arrogance.
yeah.
Okay, he has a level of arrogance. He and his wife both
Oh
have
yeah. Oh,
levels
his
of
wife.
arrogance that are unbelievable for people that are
Privilege,
in
privilege.
positions of trust.
Yeah,
Okay, so who thinks it's a good idea to put people like that in positions of trust? I mean, his appointment was clearly political, and to a certain extent, tokenism.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so you can't call the Republicans racist because they put up, a black judge to become a justice.
Only the second black justice,
That's right.
and kind of shameful. Considering this is.
Well, especially the issues
Mhm.
that came out.
Well, I mean that I think that's why a lot of this is coming out now because we see the importance of the court, and well, I mean it coincides with people understanding. Oh my God, look what the court can do, and look at what happens when we have an imbalance, a 6-3 court. We end up with things like
Well,
uh,
I have to research it, but yesterday, I can't remember what program I was listening to, but there was mention that uh, wh- uh, some people argued, well, he hasn't done anything wrong because he hasn't participated in decisions that involve Mr. Crow.
right. That
Okay,
was said. That was said the first week, the first set of stories.
well, yeah, but the response to that was, well, not Mr. Crow directly, but some of his business interests
Ah, yeah,
have
yeah,
come before the court.
yeah.
Okay, and given what we know now about the relationship, he might have. He should have been subject to recusal. He should have recused himself. That's
Ah,
voluntary, right?
that's right. That's right. I mean, even if the conflicts exist,
Still
nothing
up to
should.
him,
Yeah, you could still pull yourself back and say I refuse.
right?
Oh well.
And he didn't do
So,
so,
so we're not going to get anywhere with. We're not going to kick out Clarence Thomas, but
unless we win back in 2 years both houses.
yeah,
Then they can impeach.
it just shows the preponderance of you know information, facts that are piling up that suggest that Clarence Thomas is unfit to be justice.
Right, right. Well, I think
People knew that
I
before.
think both of us were listening to the good professor when she was describing her
Oh yeah.
relationship with him.
Ah yes, the good professor, Miss Hill.
Yeah,
Yeah. All
Anita
right.
Hill.
So Dan, we've covered. Look, we covered Clarence Thomas, DiFi, guns, um, the Justins a bit. Lloyd, we covered Kin, gun violence. I want to finish up about Lloyda Lewis. She's coming to San Francisco next week sometime. She's doing a book signing. You know, do you have any good Lloyda Lewis stories? She's an interesting person. I like her. I mean, as a
Well,
friend.
so her purpose is the book, but
Mhm.
why is she choosing to do it in San Francisco? Is she's doing a national tour?
Yeah, I think so. She did it in, she did it in New York. I saw her there. But Lloyda Lewis, big Filipino American, wealthy Filipino American, a lawyer, married Reginald Lewis. Reginald Lewis was the chairman of Beatrice Foods, and he died. He died young. It's incredible how young Reginald
Yeah,
Lewis was.
unfortunately.
Yeah, nice guy, African American, and they have a blended African American Filipino family. The book that Lloyd has written, "Why Should Guys Have All the Fun?" I believe is the
Right.
uh, talks about Filipinos in unconventional ways, like should Filipinos have premarital sex? I mean, that's a question. I mean, I'm not saying that Lloyda is the Virgin Mary.
You weren't asking me directly. Was that a personal question?
No, that was a rhetorical.
Oh, okay,
No,
okay,
no answer necessary.
okay.
But the point is, Lloyd is she's older. I mean, she's
No,
not.
okay. First of all, I did meet her. We were on the same panel together, and the panel was held as part of a celebration
Mhm.
of the 100-year relationship. Right? Remember 1998,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and Sonny Ezon, right? The filmmaker
Mhm.
had done a thing on 100 years of the relationship between the Philippines and the U.S.
Mhm.
And the panel event was held at the Lewis Museum
Mhm.
in Baltimore.
Well, right, right.
So yeah, we were on the same panel together. But just as you mentioned, DiFi might not remember you. I think she
Mhm.
would. I think she would remember you. It depends on her current mental condition, right?
Yeah.
But if she's reasonably sharp, she would remember you. I don't think she'd remember me. And I had a number of meetings with her. And on a couple of occasions, I smuggled in a video cam, uh, and because I was told that if I was going to come in as a member of the press, they wouldn't let me in. But if I just came in as a member of the community, they'd let me in. I said, okay, I'm a member of the community. Anyway,
So
uh, yeah,
so
a number of occasions. I had one occasion, maybe two. I
Mhm.
can only remember clearly the one occasion
Mhm.
at the beginning of this millennium that I was asked to be on that panel.
Mhm.
She is a wonderful person. Just
Oh
uh,
yeah, She's
the other people that were there included Reginald Lewis's parents.
yeah,
And you were saying, he died young, and his parents looked good. I mean,
yeah,
they looked young,
yeah.
and
He's
they
from
were wonderful
Baltimore.
people,
I'm
very kind,
from
you know,
Baltimore.
truly genteel,
Yeah,
uh, of course, Loida got at the time she was getting rushed all the time by crowds of people wherever she would appear, particularly Filipinos
yeah,
and African Americans.
yeah,
uh, and the Filipinos would rush on her, and everybody else would just get closed off. And
yeah.
so
Oh,
she was looking at me like she wanted to give me a ride, into Baltimore, but I never got the chance to talk to her because she was getting rushed by all kinds of people, and
yeah.
she gets hit up regularly by nonprofits
Yeah,
because they see her as Mrs. Moneybags.
yeah.
Now,
She is a kind of golden goose. Yeah.
well, because what? Because her deceased husband was the CEO of Beatrice
Yeah,
Foods.
Beatrice
Right?
Foods. Hey, hold on a second, Dan. Hold on. Tell
Your dog is freaking out of control.
yeah. Tell more. Keep talking. Come on.
Okay, so the problem was that well, not a problem. She uh yeah, I guess it was a problem. She keeps getting hit up for money by everybody, right? And it's a difficult thing. When
Okay.
she took over
All right. So Beatrice Foods.
when she took over the leadership of Beatrice Foods,
Uh,
remember how there was all kinds of misogynistic
yeah.
uh, attitudes towards her, that and I don't think it was about misogyny only. I think it was also racist.
Oh, it was both, right? It's always
Yeah, it was
you
both.
know.
The usual deadly combination of racism and misogyny.
Yeah.
That how is she qualified to run this huge operation, right? Which was not only big on the East Coast; they had strong
International.
holdings and performance in Europe as
Yeah.
well. You know,
Internationally, they're big.
yeah, yeah,
I mean,
really international. And so they said this is too big a job, right, for a woman. And the other thing that they were looking at is she's Filipino.
oh yeah,
What's that? I mean, it's bad enough that we got black people as CEOs of big
yeah,
ass corporations, right? I mean, now we got a what? A Filipino woman? What is that? That's the kind of stuff that was out there, man.
yeah. Oh yeah, and that's real. And she overcame that. And it's really nice to see her come out with this book and also come out with these ideas that are so different because to do what she did was so different. To marry an African American, to come to America and get involved in this relationship, and then she had to cross a lot of lines, traditional Filipino American or Filipino lines, and to live her life. And she's I but I have to say that before I got into this book, I thought you'd see Loida as a kind of Virgin Mary figure in the community because she's very religious, and yet she shows that kind of a modern side. So I think people would be surprised to hear what she says and would be surprised by the book. So Um, I thought I'd just mention it because she's coming to San Francisco on the she's
It's the
going to be
20th.
on the 20th. Yeah, on
Yeah,
Michigan,
it's on the 20th.
April 20th. And so anyway, hey Dan, I
Is
must
it going to be at USF or where?
know she's going to be at the bookstore, um, at a bookstore in San Francisco. Where's my this guy got the email today and oh, I'm just not as prepared to say exactly where, but
Well, on Facebook, let's see.
to say
Come on, come on, come on.
she's going to be.
My internet's a little slow.
Oh, here we are. Two slow guys on the internet. Uh, here, here it is. April 20th, 6 p.m. She's going.
Monday.
She's
Oh
going to
wait.
be at the. Oh, she's going to be at the Centro Filipino Cultural Center at 814 Mission Street. So
Oh, there.
yeah, she's
Wow.
going to be there.
Okay. Well,
So
it's good
that's.
that that place is getting used.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I like that center.
Yeah, I
It's
do
it's
too.
a, it's a center. It's there.
Yeah.
It's in the community, although but you got to RSVP.
Yeah,
E,
I don't know. I
e,
don't know if I'm gonna go. But
e, e
Odette,
dot,
Odette, Odette is doing the interview, which is cool.
yeah,
I
e
really
dot
like Odette a lot.
e.sparkso.com/Lloyda Lewis. So Lloyda Lewis will be there. All right. Well, listen, Dan. Once again, thank you for joining me on a Friday. I'll put this out. People can watch it, and we'll see if
Which a good thing you reminded me because I got an invitation too. But yeah.
yeah.
All right,
So,
got to check it
great.
out.
Yeah, and I saw her in New York. Saw her write about it. Talk about my New York experience. She's popular there too. They got a good Filipino community there in New York. But
All right, all right. So anyway, that's great,
yeah,
Chad. She's absolutely gracious person.
yes,
Obviously, proved herself competent until she retired under her own steam
yeah,
from Beatrice Foods. Uh,
yeah, and she can relax. She's got kids. She's doing these projects, and she's still active in the Philippines. Oh, one last thing about the Philippines: that the joint mission in the Philippines, U.S. Philippines. What do you think? Uh, the nationalist in me says, "What the hell is this going to? Why are they doing this?" But I'm an American, so the Philippines needs America.
as much as the Philippine nationalists would disagree, and this comes from both the right and the left, right?
Yeah,
But the left comes at it from it's neocolonialism and
right.
continuing colonization of the Philippines by the U.S. Um, and the right would come against it by saying, we got to be independent, and to a certain extent, there is an overlap, right,
Yeah,
between the criticisms that come from the left and the criticisms that come from the right.
yeah.
The reality is that given the superpower status of China, okay, the Philippines needs allies,
Oh yeah.
and they we have a history, right, of having accommodated the American presence for the better part of 100 years, right?
Well, this isn't neocolonialism as it is modern geopolitical allyship.
Exactly, but it's going to be criticized
Yeah,
as neocolonialism. That was the context that I was
yeah,
putting in that
and it
situation.
it sort of is. But if you saw the pathetic Philippine Navy out there dealing with China and the Spratlys,
Yeah,
you
we
know,
don't we barely get good scraps from the
yeah,
U.S. or anybody else.
yeah. I mean, it's just, in a way, these are military exercises. Let's see what happens, because I think the good thing is after 10 years or so, after the Duterte years, where it wasn't sure if the Philippines was pro Russia or pro China or pro US. I mean, I think now it's pretty clear.
No, under Duterte, he was definitely not pro U.S.
He was not pro US. He was not,
I
and he was
mean,
possibly
he wasn't pro black or yeah presidents either, was he?
no, and he wasn't. He could have been pro China, pro Russia at any point. It was he was really cagey, Duterte, in that sense. But I think now it's pretty clear where the Philippines' sentiments are. They're they're holding the guns of the U.S.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, there's a person named Marcos, right?
yeah, oh yeah. Well, that's kind of significant too. I mean, it's
Kind of.
historical, but
Boy, that's under.
it's historical. But look, it's functional too, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. I mean, see, they did a. Why is he president? And it's because they did a fantastic job of reworking the legacy of their father,
Right.
of
Or
his father.
Duterte did. Duterte did. Oh, now, how about this?
Duterte contributed to that process, but obviously it was Imelda and the kids that were
Yeah,
working on that.
yeah. Well, they laid low. They knew how to play their cards, and now they're back in power. But here's the thing about Loida. Loida, Filipino American. I imagine she must be dual, or
Yeah, she could be.
yeah, not sure what her status, but born in the Philippines,
Yes.
active and plays a role in Philippine politics, and she has to be kind of mixed. It's going to be kind of a practical approach to this, you know, U.S. Philippine war games kind of situation. That, as you say, it's Marcus. She was not pro Marcus at any point in her life,
Right.
and I'm sure she doesn't like the fact that Bong Bong Marcus is the president. But I don't know. I guess she was a Lenny Robredo fan, but I don't know what.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Robredo was obviously the left choice,
Yeah,
not just the progressive or radical left, but also the center left choice was Robredo. Had a lot of hopes for her, but that ain't the way the vote came down.
yeah. And the funny thing is that well, uh, well, I I just don't know how Americans feel about the Philippines now, except that they're a country in need. It's not neocolonial. It's more a practical. It's an arranged marriage, but it's not really a marriage. We're
Yeah, but
dating.
one side is into polygamy.
Yeah, we're dating. We're dating. We're
Yeah,
dating.
right.
All right, so now we got you stuck in a little Filipino stuff. All right, so Dan, look, I gotta go.
All
Thank
right.
you again for being in the
Yeah,
program.
thanks for having me on. It
Yeah,
was a very
we'll
heavy discussion around gun violence, particularly, and violence generally in American society. We have to constantly militate against violence. We
yeah,
have to mention it constantly. We have to talk about peaceful ways of resolving disputes, and we have to talk about who are being irresponsible in sowing the roots of violent behavior in their political rhetoric. Right?
yeah,
We have to do that.
yeah. All right, Dan, thank you very much. Take
All
care.
right.
Talk to you off campus. There he goes.
Great to see
Daniel,
you. Bye bye.
Daniel Phil Gonzalez, College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State University, Professor Emeritus, Asian American Studies, Filipino American Studies. My friend of the show, comes on. I ask him to talk about stuff, and he talks about stuff. So if you missed any or all of this because you're saying, "Hey, I'm here catching this live show," because Emil insists on doing a show live in front of nobody because it's more dangerous that way. But you can see the recording on amok.com in about 10-15 minutes, or on YouTube, Emil Amok 1 on YouTube, or on Twitter. Just go to the interface and take it all the way to the beginning. We talk about Ty Kin, 17-year-old kid, Stockton. Really, a student who died this week, who you probably never heard of, because it wasn't a mass killing. It was just an individual gun. And that's why we were talking about violence and talking about it's nice to talk about the political rhetoric of going after assault weapons and all that, weapons of mass destruction. but you can kill 30 people in 1 minute. That's great in one place, but you got 30 people dying in 30 different places and you don't care about them. Got to care about them. Taikin was one of, well, he was killed last week. Should have been in school. He was out broad daylight playing basketball. Got into an argument. Someone who was trying to rob him and a friend took out a gun, shot him. There's a GoFundMe for Taikin. Thaikinh. Vietnamese kid. 17. That is a GoFundMe that would be worthwhile to donate. All right. So, like I said, regular listeners to the show know we're here Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, live. Try to be 2 p.m. Pacific. We come on, talk about the day's news. This is Emil and Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. And so catch it on all those different places. And, YouTube, Emil Amok 1, Twitter at Emil Amok, Facebook, Emil Guillermo. Let's see, my name, Emil Guillermo, or on fb.com/emilguillermo.media. So there. And then also amok.com. All right, you regular listener of the show, thank you for joining us. Catch a replay on AMOK. Let's see what else. God, the Warriors are playing tomorrow. Playing those feisty Sacramento Kings. I think they're going to win, the Warriors, but it's going to be a tough series. Tough series. And that's it. I like to meditate. I think that's what keeps me from being angry. It helps. I put saffron in my coffee too. Saffron. Try it. It works. Meditation. It always boils down to loving kindness. The loving kindness meditation. It's a simple one. You send the love out to others and it comes back to you. And that's a good kind. That's a good kind of loving kindness. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time. Mahal Kita. Mahal Kita, what does that mean? Google it. Google that. Till next time. Mahal Kita.